a world where nuclear war has begun, vampires fought back in super real 3D.
So, Dynamic Range Test is the name of the game today. I have the Red Epic Dragon X filming in 6K RAW at an 8:1 compression. That is really where I use it. The dynamic range is awesome in this camera. I should be able to pull this kind of a shot off. Then we've got the Canon EOS R5 C, and that's the big new guy on the block, and we're trying to see how can it stack up with dynamic range against the Red. That's the main comparison. We're gonna do this one in 8K RAW. We'll also do XF-AVC and 4K, so that way you can see the difference between the 12-bit and the 10-bit. If the dynamic range difference is there between the RAW and the more editing-friendly codec of XF-AVC. And then I've got a Canon EOS R, which is just 8-bit, and the dynamic range on this camera, I believe, has been rated somewhere around 10.5 stops. So that's not that much to work with. We're gonna see how it can handle it. This one should, and I can see that there is some clipping. Now, the type of scene that we have set up here, see this as the background. This is a very practical situation. What this is you're under trees. It's at the peak point of the day. The sun's almost directly overhead. You have dramatic shadows, and then you have these pockets of light spilling in onto leaves that are gonna blow out, right? So if a camera can handle that, that's a really, really good thing, because you end up in these situations a lot on outdoor shoots. Then on the second test, we're gonna do it under a pole barn. I'll have a big shade over me, and then we'll be looking out at the bright sun spilling onto some open grass, and that should be blown out potentially once we boost these shadows enough to see me in the dark. Now, one thing I will point out before we do any of these tests is just that you're gonna see what you see in the camera. What you're trying to do is that it's not gonna necessarily look the best. You wanna put it at a spot with your settings that you can, hopefully you're not clipping your highlights, and hopefully you're not clipping your shadows. And as long as that's happening, it still may not be the look that you want. In post, that is where you're gonna get the maximum amount of dynamic range out of your camera. You do have to do some masking here to get the maximum amount of look of dynamic range out of your camera, but you're gonna trace out certain areas, the sky or whatever. You're gonna bring the highlights down in those areas, then you're gonna trace out areas, and you're gonna bring the shadows up in certain areas. And just a basic mask would just be one that's kind of at the top, and then you feather it. So it's like a square that splits the frame in half. You have your halfway point here. You're gonna create a square on top, bring the exposure down a little bit, feather this edge that's in the middle, or make a circle around the person. It depends on the shot. Make a circle around the person, feather it out real deeply, and boost these shadows back up there, so that way the person comes back to life. They're a little bit popping out of the image, and then you brought your highlights down to the spots that really need it. So all that is, you know, part of the game to get the max amount of dynamic range. I will do some of that, but we'll also see what it looks like straight in camera. So it's kind of a fun test to see what we can get out of these cameras. Got 24mm lenses on all three cameras, and this is what it looks like. So we got the Canon EOS R right now, and you can see that that pocket back there might be having some trouble. That's 8-bit. Then we've got the R5 C, and I'm trying to get out of the way of the most troublesome spot of highlights back there. And we also want to pay attention to, in post, as I raise the shadows back up on my skin tones and everything, how does it handle that? Is there noise in the image? How does it handle that? Is there noise in the image? How does it handle that? Is there noise in the image? How does it handle that? Is there noise in the image? How does it handle that? Is there noise in the image? And then we've got the Red Epic Dragon, which is supposed to have the most dynamic range. This thing's supposed to have 16.5 stops of dynamic range. 8-bit color in the Canon EOS R. We have 12-bit color in the EOS R5 C that has the RAW codec happening right now in ST, 8K. And then on the Red Epic in 6K, we have 16-bit color. That's what the Red is supposed to have. All right, we're back on. This is 10-bit XF-AVC inside the Canon EOS R5 C. I am moving around just so you can see that hot spot back there. And this is a kind of impossible test to do, because every time the light is just constantly changing back there as far as its exposure values. But you'll get a general idea. Now, I was filming an 8K RAW ST. Now I'm gonna put it in 8K RAW LT, which I probably should have done it in a different order, but that's just how it worked out. So here we go, RAW light. Let's see if there's any difference there. Okay, RAW light. All right, so there was RAW light, then there was RAW ST. So these are the two differences there. So this is kind of a ridiculous scenario. You'd normally add a little bit of light to somebody, but it's naturally lit. And again, we have the same three cameras, and they're listed below on the video. Kind of a ridiculous scenario. You'd normally add a little bit of light to somebody, but it's naturally lit. And again, we have the same 3 cameras and they're listed below on the video. And again, we have the same 3 cameras and they're listed below on the video. And again, we have the same 3 cameras and they're listed below on the video. We're under this huge overhang. Now we've got this huge bright spot out here. So with something like this, the only way that you're gonna achieve some kind of look out of it that is gonna look somewhat correct is you're gonna, again, go in post, boost the shadows up, bring the highlights down. So we'll see what we can get out of it. Right now in these cameras, when I'm looking through the viewfinders, all of them look pretty bad. And again, this is the most extreme request of dynamic range that you can do for the most part. On the Canon EOS R5 C, we are recording an 8K RAW light. We're gonna switch it over to the 4K XF-AVC, which is 10-bit. Booyah, now we're in 4K XF-AVC. Is there a difference in dynamic range, huh? I don't know, maybe so. All right, cool.
Movie voice.